order. The chair, respect to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. Can we call the roll, please, Madam Secretary?
Of course. Justin Baylor.
Here.
Scott Flynn.
Here.
Maureen Helmuth.
Yes.
John Knoll.
Here.
Tom Schultz.
Here.
Leslie Pilot.
Here.
CJ Gosdor.
Here.
I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the agenda February 6th, 2024.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda, February 6th, 2024.
Second.
Doesn't matter.
Support.
That motion passes. Item number 5, approval of the minutes of January 16th, 2023.
Did we vote on that?
We did not.
I think we did. Are we just playing catch up or
We-
No,
housekeeping?
No, she's talking about the first motion.
The agenda, we didn't vote
On
on
the
it.
You
agenda.
got it, more, yeah.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Madam Secretary, we call the roll.
She did that, but we didn't
We
vote
can-
on it.
What,
Approval of the agenda. All those in favor?
I'm sorry, all those in favor,
Aye.
Aye.
anybody that disagrees?
We'll get you the agenda.
Item number 5, approval of the minutes from January 16th, 2023. A motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes January 16th, 2024.
Support.
We have a support, but we have a conflict in our agenda. It says 2023, so I think we need to change that to 2024.
I think it's been corrected, John. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, you got it.
Yours is the old one, but ours is the new one.
Yeah, I
Okay.
did print up new ones.
Yeah, I got one right here. Good, the sign thing changed, so.
I emailed you all too, but maybe you didn't get that.
Okay, so we have a motion and approved. Can we vote on it, please? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? No. Do we have any external correspondence that we need to talk about tonight?
No, I did not receive any.
And then I'll make a motion to call the public. Do we have anybody like to come up and please come up to the podium, state your name?
It is a non-agenda item, so. Dale Willicke, 59 North Washington. You may be familiar, this is the house where MDOT forgot to get the sidewalk easement. Interesting, last month the Department of Justice indicted Jeffrey Bartlett for fraud. And I'm going to imagine nobody on here has a clue on who Jeffrey Bartlett is. Mr. Bartlett was the surveyor for MDOT during Restore M24 through Oxford. Now, he was indicted on charges of pretending he had a minority business. But Mr. Bartlett was also in Oxford writing fraudulent driveway easements over private property in Oxford for real estate developers. And of course, creating driveway easements for these real estate developers was for a purpose, to add value to the property. And Mr. Bartlett did this while employed by MDOT and using federal funds, federal transportation funds. I'm waiting on more information on Mr. Bartlett. I'll let you know when I get it. But I do want to thank State Senator Ruth Johnson and her staff. And also State Rep Josh, and I'm going to mispronounce his name. He lives here in Oxford. Is it Shriver? Okay.
Yep.
And his staff for being helpful. Real issue I'm here tonight was, if you remember, about a year ago, 43 North Washington, a couple lots down from my house. Mr. Schneider was here with a proposal for a backlot office. You might also remember Mr. Schneider got quite upset and threatened me when I questioned his claim to a driveway easement across my property. If I recall, when I was at the meeting, it was the village planner, village engineer, and Mr. Knoll, had some issues with compliance with the site plan. I was rather surprised to see the village is enforcing the ordinance, particularly as it pertains to surveys and professional licensing architects, engineers, surveyors. I suspect the village is trying to avoid what happened back in 2015 when the state of Michigan threatened to take over the building department. That was when the village had a fake professional engineer designing buildings in Oxford. Essentially, he's ripping off the residents and the businessmen, claiming he was an engineer. He wasn't. Now there are a bunch of buildings in the village, no building permits, no certificate of occupancy, no MDOT permits, among other issues. And Mr. Schultz and Ms. Helmuth were here at the time. If you're wondering about the buildings, they can fill you in on the details. So I'm looking for an update on 43 North Washington, and I'll be happy to just sit quietly in the back until you get to planner comments and village manager comments. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public?
Santa, nothing.
I'm mute tonight. Thank you.
I'd like to proceed on to new business, item number 8. PC 24-0240 North Washington Street. Parcel ID 042246-001. Zoning C1 Core. General Business District is looking for a sign permit applicant. Is the applicant here tonight? With no applicant, Mario, would you like to fill us in on where you're at with that, please?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everyone. So tonight we're here to consider this application for to install one internally illuminated wall sign on the front or west elevation of the building at 40 North Washington. Now, their original application, I made a review letter, and that's in front of you, dated January 25th. Originally, they were proposing a internally illuminated box sign with a vinyl face. And my recommendation was to, amongst other things, invert the colors of the sign, and then also leave it to your discretion as whether you feel their originally proposed box sign was appropriate given the style of the building it's being positioned on, the other signage on the building, and the fact that it's located within the downtown core. Since that time, the applicant has just till today submitted a revised sign application. At least a revised graphic is in front of you, I believe, with your packet as supplemental information. So now they're proposing a channel cut letter sign. It's totaling approximately 26 square feet. So its location and its size of this proposed sign in front of you does meet the ordinance requirements. But just as any other sign that has internal illumination, you have authority to review for compliance with your design standards and compatibility with the adjacent signage. So basically, initially my comments were that box signs are pretty conventional. They don't they serve a purpose, but they don't always complement or represent the highest quality of style or design when it comes to the downtown core. This new one proposed in front of you is a channel cut. It's similar to one that was just recently approved over the K-Blocks barbecue, directly adjacent to this unit on the north. And generally speaking, this sign is definitely a lot more attractive, I think, than a box sign. And actually, even the width of the proposed text will mean, even though there's white text, it means that the amount of light transmission on that sign is actually going to be pretty minimal. So in the end, if you feel that this channel cut letter sign is appropriate given the architectural style of the building, we would recommend granting approval, probably just contingent upon the issuance of the inclusion of a photometric sensor to allow for the sign to be automatically turned on when there's low ambient light levels. Whether there's a need actually to control the light itself with a dimmer, we could be consistent with what we've done in the past, or might not even need that given the minimal amount of light transmission. But those are my comments based on receiving this today. So, I will answer any questions.
Thank you. Leslie, we'll start down there. Do you have any questions in regards to this?
No questions, just a comment that I am in agreement with the concept that this is consistent with other channel cut line signs we have approved on non-historic but aesthetically consistent facades downtown, so I like the change a lot.
Thank you. Mo?
What's the square footage allowed in this building? They have a separate agreement, right?
Well, there was separate agreements back under the previous zoning ordinance. There were, in the past, the village approved sign design patterns, I believe it was called, or I can't remember the exact terminology.
Yeah, like their own sign master plan or.
Sign master plan, that's what it was. But now, with the new zone, with this current zoning ordinance in force, those are no longer applicable. So we just based it totally on the width of the business. And actually, because this particular unit also includes the bays on the east side of the building that face the back, basically. And right now, it's with that nice mural. The width of the building is pretty extensive, so they can have a maximum of 30 square foot. And so they're proposing 26.
Tom, do you have any comments?
Probably for Joe, I assume Kelly hasn't seen this revised one.
No, we talked about it because the guy called in after he saw Mario's initial review and he came in our office, does permits and stuff, he said, do you think they'd be more open to a channel cut letter? And I said, sure, and when I talked to Kelly about this, I goes, you should probably, if you feel that they should have it too, then point your review in that direction as well. So she hasn't seen it, but she was hoping it would be some type of a channel cut.
Oh, perfect, okay, good, thanks, Joe. Oh, that's it, thank you.
Scott?
Mr. Chair, my questions were already answered in regards to the sign to wall square footage ratio, and seeing this latest design addresses the DDA's concerns.
Thank you. CJ?
Much improved, thank you.
Justin?
No, I'm good. I like the sign design. I think it looks really good. I have no issues with it.
I like the new improved over the box, and I'm looking for a motion, if someone would like to make a motion.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to approve the new sign design for 40 North Washington Street, suite number 3, parcel ID 04-22-460-001, with conditions and recommendations outlined by the McKenna letter dated January 25th, 2024.
Second.
We have
Open for discussion. Mara, does your letter talk about the photo censoring and the dimming in your write-up?
Yes.
Okay. I know that it changed, okay. Then I'd like to take a vote. I'm sorry, does anybody else have any questions?
Just one question, so Justin, so did you want to include Mario's comment about the dimmer?
That's based on recommendations outlined in the McKenna letter dated January 25th, 2024. That's why I stated it that way.
Then, Madam Secretary, I'd like to have a roll call.
Ballard?
Yes.
Astor?
Yes.
Siler?
Yes.
Talbot?
Yes.
Schultz?
Yes.
Flynn?
Yes.
Zoll?
Yes. Next item of business is item number B, PC 24-03, 72 South Washington Street, partial ID number 04-27230-020. It's zone C1 Core Business District. Applicant is LabCorp. Are they present today? Mario, would you like to fill us in?
Yes. This is a very similar situation, well, on their first shot, I guess I should say. The applicant is requesting the installation of one internally illuminated wall sign on the western front elevation. And their initial proposal is for a channel cut acrylic box letters and a logo with an internally LED projecting the light forward. This one's a little unique because the channel cut letters have what's called apparently a day-night vinyl surface. And so it appears to allow for a black surface appearance during the day when there's light out, but then allows the light to actually emit through that vinyl at night, creating a illuminated text. So in the end, this building they're being proposed on is a little bit more of a modern style. It's not a classic architectural specific design, architectural period, but it's a very nice building. It's a brick facade. They have stone columns, decorative light fixtures. So we think the channel cut letter would complement the building well. The amount of light area, the amount of sign area that where light will transmit from would be pretty minimal compared to the rest of the sign area, the way we measure it. So we would recommend if the planning commission is in agreement that the sign is appropriate for this location and this particular building style, that the granting of approval contingent upon the installation of a photometric sensor with an automatic dimmer.
Thank you. CJ, do you have any questions?
I do not. So just real quick, so the existing versus proposed, what is, in this, in the diagram here? Is it just what it looks like in the daytime versus what it looks like in the evening time? Is that
Correct,
kind of what it's
exactly,
showing?
yeah. That's what they're trying to demonstrate, that in the daytime, it's actually it's basically black letters is what it looks like, the LabCorp text. But then at nighttime, they're actually illuminated, so it's gonna look white.
I've never heard that before. That's really interesting.
It is, I never heard that, but.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's, I have no questions or concerns.
Scott?
Same.
Tom?
Same.
Mo?
I'm good.
Leslie?
No questions or concerns either.
My comment is that this is the first in the village. I'll be very excited to see how this is going to play out with the visual during the daytime and nighttime. So, no further questions. I'd like to take a roll call, Madam Secretary.
We need a motion first.
Excuse me, I'd like to have a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the sign for 72 South Washington Street, parcel ID PO-04-27-230-020, with conditions based on the recommendations outlined by the McKenna letter dated January 25th, 2024.
Support?
Now can I ask for roll call? Roll call, please.
Gosner,
Yes.
Ballard,
Yes.
Flynn,
Yes.
Schultz,
Yes.
Pilak,
Yes.
Helmuth,
Yes.
and Nold.
Yes. Mario, item number C is our 2023 annual report.
Yes. So before you, I have the first draft of our annual report that's required by the state statute to submit to village council, just to summarize all the accomplishments the planning commission has done in 2023. So basically, we just summarizes the number of meetings that have been held, all the various site plans and approvals that have been, and considerations that have been granted, and then also the various other considerations, mainly focused on the design reviews and the rezonings that we've accomplished. And then beyond that, there is the second part of the report, which typically is the action plan. And the text that's on this draft is very similar to what we've submitted previous year. Rather than take a shot at making any proposals, I just wanted to hear if you wanted to supplement this with any other recommendations, because right now on that list is just the zoning ordinance review as we move along, and if there's any text sections that need a review during the course of the year as we do things, those can be amended. And then also the idea of letting council know again that there's training available for the planning commission members through various, both remote and then conferences. Conferences are coming back. The Michigan Planning Association is a very good conference that does a good job of switching between upper part of the Lower Peninsula and then and then more lower part of the Lower Peninsula sites. I can't remember when it's coming up this year. But they're pretty good in terms of if you want to get further educated on items related to to your volunteer efforts here. So with that, I would take any recommendations you'd like to see in terms of modifications to this report.
Anybody in the planning commission? Leslie?
Mario, are there any other areas addressed in the redevelopment ready communities baseline report that aren't mentioned here?
There are, that was an ongoing effort. Last time we did talk about that. The administration has been doing a lot to finalize those items. So that's something we could take a look at if Joe believes that there's other outstanding items that could be listed here. I haven't seen the latest version of that report, but, so.
Well, I think a lot of things fall underneath the zoning ordinance review, right? You could get really, not in the weeds, but you can really accomplish a lot of things there. And we mentioned before about some of the sign ordinance about the awnings in front and back and things like that. Landscaping obviously is one you're looking to tackle right away. I can't think of a lot of other ones that would come to mind as far as it might need attention in the short term.
So they basically, this covers enough of the priorities as you see them too?
I think so.
Because the key about the redevelopment ready is that we actually have a lot of the components, and forgive me for the new members of the planning commission might have heard of that. The state has this program called a redevelopment ready certification program, which the municipality, all municipalities can go through it if they have a downtown core, that they can, their various documents related to planning and also the processes by which businesses can review and approve their future development, go through it, and they get a status of when you have components that are deemed by the state to be necessary to have a very efficient and quick turnaround for development, but also that that address the needs of the community, then you eventually achieve what's called redevelopment ready status. And that actually, the main point of that is that you have these, like I said, you have all the main components you need for your master plan and your zoning ordinance and your development process. But then B, the other key thing is that you do have, I don't know if it's priority status, but it's definitely a lot more grant opportunities. For example, there's just a recent grant opportunity through MISTA, Michigan State Housing Development Authority, that that has grants a certain amount available for non-redevelopment ready, and they have more money available for redevelopment ready communities. So that's one of the main advantages of the RRC status. It does take some time for communities to go through the process and get approved. So the fact that we're still working on that is nothing out of the ordinary. But we were pretty close. So I believe once those final administrative things get completed, we can probably see that come to fruition and more grant opportunities in the future. So anyway, that's a summary of the project, and then this is, like I said, we're pretty close on that.
When you say pretty close, do you mean that we expect to be redevelopment ready, like, in the next year?
Oh, for sure.
For sure, okay.
There wasn't a whole lot left to do. Some of the things, they changed. You go through this process and all of a sudden like, well, now you don't need that, or now this person moved along, and so. But the initial review showed us very little things. More was some of the process we had to just complete, showing how our things flow through our office and things like that. There was very little left, I don't think.
Very little.
For us to do, really.
So does this include mostly like trying to attract like private redevelopment, or things like redoing the park, like public type agreements?
Well, it's really about, as I mentioned, just making sure you have plans that address various items. Like, for example, the fact that we have our redevelopment area plans, our sub-area plans, that's something that other communities don't. The fact that our zoning ordinance has been updated and includes certain things that are required in the state statute, like a PUD option, like a conditional rezoning option, kind of the basic tools they want to make sure you have available, so that when any property owner or business comes in, they know the tools that are available. And then the other thing is making sure that you're up to date on the modern conveniences. For example, having like the zoning ordinance is available online, and having application forms available either online, and then having things like even a pre-development pre-application review process. Because for example, Joe and I have met a couple times with various people that have property but haven't applied yet. So just the fact that we have that process, that makes us, business friendly as it is, it makes us, that's one of the things they're looking to make sure that every community provides.
Okay, thank
So
you.
it's not, those are like the main tools.
Okay.
Do we have any more questions? Are we looking for a motion to forward this to the council as a recommendation, or?
Yeah, if you find that the draft in front of you is appropriate, if you can make a recommendation to forward to the council or ask for any changes.
I'd just like to make a quick comment related to it. So I took a look at it, and so it was a good outline of what we did for the, for the 2023. Also, I was looking at the proposed action plan and the zoning ordinance review. I know we've been really kind of looking at those ordinances in the past, and over the last couple of years, we've addressed a lot of those that didn't quite line up to what we, to existing or meeting some of the existing needs that we have. And I know that we made strides to kind of make that happen. For example, as we've been looking at the landscape ordinance as well. And I would say that some of the other ones, I think there was...
Building height, one was one, remember,
Yep, that's
residential
right.
homes.
That's right. And so we've made great steps over the last few years of updating those. I would think that the only one that we maybe want to talk about again was the signs, to maybe consider it. Other than that, I personally was pretty happy with where we're at with our zoning ordinances, but it doesn't hurt to listen to what maybe comes up this year.
Mr. Chair? Again, and to follow up on what Justin states there, sometimes things, as they start popping up more and more, you think, okay, maybe we should take a look at that.
Mhm.
So, I know we addressed the clear vision area. It used to only be in our ordinance for streets. Now we have it in the ordinance for including driveways. So some of those things, you can't do everything you don't need ordinance with in 2015, 16, 17 when they did it last. So sometimes there's minor things in there. The outdoor sales thing we did a few years ago, that was like 3 or 4 years ago. A lot of those have been addressed. The commercial vehicles was updated with the better definitions and things like that. So a lot of them, as they come to light, you might not know you need it until it comes to light. So
I have a question just for, last meeting we talked about the signs. It was a recommendation, one of the members suggested that we look at signs. Do we need to put that on our list to do, Joe, or how do you want to?
that, whatever direction planning commission wishes to go with that, you will support that. My one item that I brought up a year or so ago was about the awnings for the downtown businesses where it's restricted to the name or text can only go on one, when many of them have a front and back. And I thought we might want to revisit that, see if you could allow it as one per frontage or something like that. I know you don't want to go crazy, I mean, we all revert back to the Ware's Toys and the True South that had rating on 9 out of 9 awnings or whatever they had. It was a little overboard, so. That's the one I can think of that might still be out there. It was very specific that could use some attention. And however you guys feel about the light, that's however you want to approach it, lighting.
Mr. Chair. Just a comment, we've got open dialogue going on potential specific areas within the ordinance to focus on. As it relates to the annual review in and of itself, that item 1 of our proposed action plan should then encompass what we choose to do as specific action items. Call it after the fact, after this has been presented to the council for review.
So basically what you're saying is, right, the comment or question that I was gonna ask is, are you asking or stating that you have to put that in our proposed action plan, or it's something that we note that we have to do it, and then we create that as we go, as the year goes on? That's kind of like a question and a comment, so.
Directed to me?
Yeah, sure.
My comment was a point of clarification.
Okay.
For my understanding of what item number 1, zoning ordinance reviews,
Yes.
what it means, what it encompasses, and the there not being a need to be specific or decide on those specifics here and now.
Correct, so, okay, yeah,
So-
now I understand. So you're saying that we don't have to be clear right this minute, we just have to know that we're gonna be reviewing those over the course of the year.
That was my understanding, I
Yep.
wanted to make that as a point of clarification for everyone else.
So we're on the same page now, yes?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect, because that was gonna be my question as we go.
Thank you. Joe?
Moving on to number 2 that was mentioned by Mario. Michigan Planning Association, we are a member of. I need to probably update my list now because who here gets the Michigan Planning magazine? Mo, you gotta get it. Right? Tom, I gotta get you on the list. Scott, did you?
Yep.
You did? Okay, so we're, all right, and CJ, you get, okay. I just gotta get Tom back on the list then. Probably Michelle McClellan's still getting it at her house, so I'll divert that. In addition to some of those things, there are still some, I think Michigan Planning and like Rowe Engineering, Rowe Professional Services, every now and then does an online thing. And some of them are free or some of them are modest cost. We have some training dollars in, and so we'll try to share those out for somebody, 'cause it's hard for you guys to come home and then, oh, we're gonna go out to, Rochester on a Friday from 2 to 4. It just doesn't fit.
I attended one last year.
Yeah.
I get an A for effort.
Yeah, so.
No, it was online for sure.
So yeah, so as those come up too, and you'll see them, some of those things, if you see something in the Michigan Planning magazine that catches your eye, so reach out to us.
Terry has sent out emails inviting us or telling us available to
Yep,
do
yep,
some
so,
training, so.
and I'll review what we have, sometimes we put a $500 or $1,000 in the budget, for $25, $50, sometimes meetings, things like that, so. The toughest part of it is for you guys to be able to fit it into your schedule, because this isn't what you do day in, day out, right? So, see something comes up, let us know.
Is there any more comment in regards to our annual review letter? Then do we need to make a motion to forward it on to the council?
I believe so, yes. So, I may have this wrong, but I don't quite remember, I might not do it quite right, but, I make a motion to approve the Planning Commission 2023 annual report and 2024 action plan as presented, for submittal to the village council approval. Yeah, sort of.
Or receive and file is all they might do.
Or receive,
Yeah.
or receive, okay.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Roll call, please.
Pilak,
Yes.
Helmut,
Yes.
Schultz,
Yes.
Flynn,
Yes.
Ballard,
Yes.
Gosdorf,
Yes.
Nold.
Yes.
So, quick comment, maybe next time for that, is it, just a motion as presented?
You can receive and file it and
Receive
you can
and
then
just
forward to for the council for review. For review and feedback perhaps.
Receive and file.
And since we're talking about the annual report, can we bring the signs to the agenda? Do I need a motion on that?
As a chair, you can just direct us to add something on the agenda or,
Would you please add that to next month's agenda or the next appointed time that we meet to discuss signs, to see what we'd like to do with the sign ordinance?
would you like to just look at the whole sign ordinance and then go through it? Or do you wanna just address a specific item?
I think we need to look at the whole sign ordinance because
Alright.
there were 3 different topics. You brought one
Sure.
up about the awnings,
Mhm.
awning signs, so I think we need to look at it from the top down.
Very good. We'll add that on just for discussion purposes, if nothing else, at
Yep.
the next meeting.
Yep. Mario, is that good for you?
Yeah, that works.
Thank you. Number 9, old business. Our infamous landscaping ordinance draft amendments discussion. Mario, if you'd like to lead off on that, please.
Yes, so, basically, this is something we talked about before because as we've gone through and done the various site plan reviews, we've noticed some things that, at least I've noticed some things, I know you guys have as well, that needed, at a minimum, some updating. And also as well, needed to focus on, trying to make it more user-friendly for the applicants so they know specifically where certain things are, because sometimes they tend to gloss over things that we find important. For example, the minimum or the maximum amount of percentage of each plant species to make sure there aren't 100 100% of the same species of shrub. So at a minimum, I wanted to present, what the ordinance in front of you does is those two things. Tries to clean it up with regards to references, make sure they're more modern and more up to date. And then in terms of different organizations and different other requirements of different associations. And then also try and reorganize it a little bit to make it a little bit more with new headings and that sort of thing. So with that initial attempt, my main two goals were to ask you, number one, if you feel that the fact that this ordinance goes towards a lot of allowing for flexibility based on your planning commission's interpretation of the intent of the ordinance. So there are a lot of instances in which you can basically modify the standards of certain requirements based on the site. So based on the site itself, based on what the applicant is proposing, and based on the intent of the ordinance, which is to not just aesthetically improve the village, but also to make sure it functions better with the benefits of landscaping. Make sure that flexibility is better, or if you'd rather basically turn the dial a little bit more in the other direction and be a little bit more specific with certain things, like increase the quantities of the items or make things required rather than mandatory. So basically your opinion, flexibility versus more specifics. And then the second thing being, there are a lot of other ordinances out there to do a lot of different things that are intended to help the community that, like I said, bring the benefits of landscaping to the community. And one of those one of those ways they do that is utilizing landscaping to deal with stormwater management. We have a lot of communities that are dealing with a lot of stormwater and flooding issues, and some of them try it out for the first time for doing things such as requiring small first flush areas or requiring small improvements to the site to try and contain a little bit more stormwater. Others go to very explicitly have no water runoff from a site greater than the agricultural rate, and so that's a lot of that delves a lot into stormwater management. I can tell you that Oakland County, along with Livingston, Wayne, and Monroe, Washington, have attempted to, have adopted new stormwater management ordinances that are attempting to make sure the community, that developers in the whole Metro Detroit area have the same kind of standards applicable to them. So that's something that we would look at if you wanted to get very deep into it. But that's just an example of something that if we wanted to talk about.
This is the number two of your two questions.
Correct.
My comment or my question to you is that would you recommend a separate ordinance for stormwater management? Or would you?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
I was about to
We've
say.
already adopted the Water Resource Commission's stormwater management in the last year or two. It is part of our development plans. It really only comes into effect if you're disturbing an acre or more. So in many cases, it won't come into play, especially if you're just redeveloping something small.
Exactly.
But yeah, we have already adopted that stormwater management.
So, yeah, and I agree, as Joe said, you do need to adopt your own, and then you already have dealt with that. So the only instance would be here, other communities that are more urban like you, do look into those sites that aren't applicable to the stormwater. Because like, if it's already been developed, which everything in the village pretty much has, then it's considered a brownfield. So the amount of, when the county requirements for stormwater don't get triggered typically, unless more than an acre is disturbed overall. And the fact that, plus the size of the sites in the village and in other communities, you don't have a lot of chances that would be impacted. So some communities do attempt to try and deal with it because they have so much issues with flooding that they do have local requirements in their landscape ordinance that are attempting to deal with them. Now it doesn't get a lot into the details of the engineering requirements because there's very complex, well, I think they're complex because I can't figure out how they calculate it. The engineers figure out how much area is needed for stormwater. But there are subtle ways in which landscaping can supplement these issues in their own little ways. But that's only one topic that I'm bringing up. I'm not advocating for it. I'm just saying if there are things out there if you wanted to try, you could.
Then I'd like to ask Joe, you get the feedback.
Okay, so,
Please.
and they make the rules statewide, right? Stormwater stuff goes from the feds to the state to the county, lands in our lap. It's very onerous, it's very much a pain for every developer out there. That has to be dealt with though, right? Stormwater, you can't just dump your whole parking lot into the county drain and then deluge the people next door and downstream. That's one major part of it. The other part is the erosion and everything that can be caused by doing so. We are in a very unique situation around here with the soils around here. You dig down 100 feet, you're still in gravel. Very few spots do we have, like when they did the West Burdick condos down here, the Village Ridge condos on West Burdick, they actually had, that was an old swamp years ago, Dave used to swim there. And there was peat there. They had to go down and put pilings in for the foundations of those condos because again, soil borings came back. That's probably 1 or 2 spots in the whole village that are like that. When they did the car wash down here, we specifically divided that lot, so they ended up with a .96 acre lot to deal with. So we didn't trigger some of the things the Water Resource Commission rules that we abide by would have done. They still had to do their underground storage. It was still calculated out and designed, and the engineers had to verify it. They did some soil borings, I think, as well to verify what's below and how much saturation and rates and things like that in the subsurface storage would happen. We are very lucky around here. We have a lot of absorption going around. So in 9 out of 10 other communities, that is a problem, big problem, and the bioswales and all those things are ways to help them deal with it. It's not that big of a problem for us, so we will always deal with stormwater. You can't not. But I would let that, as of the 4 or 5, 6 things related in the landscaping, I would say that's your least to worry about.
And I think that's a very good example of when you want to look at the ordinances, like, while a lot of communities might do it, what's best for Oxford based on the conditions of Oxford. And like Joe said, we're very lucky that we have that good infill rate. I'll be honest, I don't know much about what happens when there is a good rain in the area. I've never been around when we've had like a really good soaking and like how like there's a lot of areas where there's standing water or not. So you guys do. So you would know if that's even an issue to consider, or the fact take advantage of a characteristic of the village and that we do have pretty good perk rates, if that's the case.
So more aesthetically, the things that, Leslie always points out to these folks that you could do better on, avoiding the species that aren't native, those kind of things, I think would be your largest focus when it comes to this, aesthetics, screening that Mario's addressing and things like that. And again, then Mario serves a lot of communities, and I'm sure a lot of communities, stormwater is 10 times worse of a problem than it is in ours. We're just lucky in that sense. So of all the things you're gonna deal with here, leave that one as your minimum one. That's why you might have to deal with that. It's nice to maybe deal with a little bioswale, or if you're gonna have a retention pond, to do it in a way that works well, and there's not just a hole to collect water, right? You have some plants around there that help absorb it even better. That's always great, but it's not the problem that needs addressing as much as normal.
While we're on this topic, any more questions that the planning commission may have? Then that was the second of your 2 questions, and I'd like to go back and address the first one and see what the commission would like to say. That was dealing with it. I would like to know the planning commission's opinion and preferences on flexibility of the ordinance versus the defined standards. That's for the ordinance in front of us tonight. Leslie, you have any comments on?
Well, I think sort of a sum of each, is how I feel about that, which is the probably doesn't help a lot, except I think my concerns are, with regard to some aspects of the, regulating or, reviewing landscape requirements that we might adopt. I want to make sure that there isn't an undue burden on the village for having a professional who's capable of interpreting certain kinds of things like the type of tree, the condition of the tree, whether there are resources, if outside assistants and consultants need to be brought in. Like, for example, the arborist question.
Mhm.
So if there are existing trees on a lot that someone wants to do brings a site plan review, who is the best entity to determine whether those are desirable trees or not, whether they meet the standards or not? And if the planning commission, is the default, then the planning commission at least is 7 people to consider that. Whereas if the village is enforcing or interpreting that, then they have to have the resources so they can, apply whatever the ordinance says in a reasonable way. So I think it's really, the flexibility issue is if I think the planning commission is gonna bear the burden for reviewing, being the final review. And I think, with standards, included more specifically, then I think that falls more on the village administration to be able to determine that when a site plan comes in, or the planner, for example. So if I'm wrong, please correct me, but at times you've said, you know, I'm not sure landscape architecture and trees, that's not my thing. So when we need someone to do that, who would that be? That's kind of where I'm at with how flexible versus how specific should we
To
be.
help out on that, Mario, I'm going on memory. This says that they have to have a separate plan on their site plan documents that calls out landscaping. And on that plan, you will have to review it to make sure that they're in line with our ordinance.
Yes.
So that might mitigate some of your concern on that.
It would, except for something like, the requirement language that Mario is proposing about, for example, the type and variety of trees that are in existence, that those be accurately surveyed, and who would determine if it's accurate? That's kind of where I'm going, like, who can or wants to, or what are the resources to make sure that's done correctly? So we don't have someone say, no, these are all, you know, maples, when they're really all catalpas or something.
Right. So that is something that a lot of communities, the way they deal with it is they hang their hat on the ordinance requirements, and the applicant is required to submit accurate, detailed information. And so, you know, whether they, and then a lot of times when like myself, when I review the plans, I am reviewing them based, like, the separate landscape plans, I would review them if they have a list of, or they just identify the existing trees. I'll definitely verify that they're not missing like a whole stand of trees in the middle, or even the specific quantities. They don't, depending on the size of the site, I don't get into the minutia of like, you know, how many trees are scrub trees or everything. But I do make an effort to make sure that the plan in front of me represents reasonably well what I think is on the site, without necessarily going out and doing an actual tree survey myself. And so a lot of communities do that. They say the applicant is required to submit truthful and honest information that's accurate. If you wanted to, if we ever found that that was an issue, some communities, it's very rare, but in theory they would have like a separate person go out and survey the community, the sites themselves, to make sure that the quantity, the size, and the species are accurate. But generally speaking, that doesn't happen too often, because I just don't have many, in my experience, I don't have many instances of that happening. Because, actually, I would say, is that a lot of times then, when it comes to trees and trees preservation, because the whole intent of that is just to make sure that, you know, the village is a very mature community. We have some very nice mature trees that are valuable, add a lot of character and a lot of other physical attributes to the village. Excuse me. And we don't, right now, the way the ordinance is listed, it's more about your direction to the applicant of which trees you'd like to save. There isn't any specific regimented requirement that trees of certain size or certain species have to be preserved. Mainly also because we're a built-out community. The amount of lots out there that where they have an extensive amount of trees that need saving. You know, there aren't a lot left in the village. The ones we have are in a proper location, that chances are new development isn't gonna take them down.
I do have a note here that in 7.2.4 part I, number 2, there's a reference to that the village would provide inspection for the health and desirability of existing trees.
You up to the challenge on that, Jim?
See, that's the sort of thing,
I
like,
was gonna get in, yeah.
can they take that on? Is that the best way to address that? And I'm glad that it hasn't been a problem a lot, but I'm thinking about how to deal with it when it does come up. There was one applicant, in the last year or two that reported what I thought was a pretty significant difference in the existing trees and the ones that they were proposing taking out. And I wasn't sure anyone but me had even looked at that, you know.
So, sorry, go ahead.
So that's all.
And yeah, and on that specific instance, I remember it was on Glass, if I recall, and I believe if you look at the area, a lot of those trees were in the right of way behind their building, right? Off their property, but there was only a small amount on theirs, but,
Maybe.
yeah, some of the things as I'm going through this, you know, and the maintenance here, some of the stuff, it's very burdensome to me to say like, screening elements of plants should be maintained in accordance with the approval site plan and the following, and the very first one is maintenance procedures and frequencies to be followed shall be specified on the site plan. So we're gonna tell people when, and they have to prune the trees and stuff like that. That just seems
Well,
like something you're gonna put on paper and never gonna happen.
well, the good thing about that actually is that, all those kind of standards are, would be based on what arborists or landscape architects already have. And honestly, what happens is the landscape architects, they have like a list of them that they just copy paste all the time onto every site plan.
I'm talking in reality what happens after that site is built.
Oh, right.
In 3 months, are we gonna drive by and see, oh, well, it was time to prune the shrubs, and they didn't do so? That's my
Right.
challenge with that, I say.
Exactly, no, that's a very good point.
And secondarily, for instance, on the Village Ridge condos down there, they had some, in the center area that was being developed, they had some scrubby pine trees up in there that were pretty rough looking. They intended to keep many of them. Well, as they were digging some of the basements, they got so close, they took them down, but they replaced them with a much nicer tree that matched some of the other ones around, and the residents were quite happy about that. And sometimes the landscape architects, you know, they'll call out a Colorado spruce, whatever, and then kind of find out, well, they're not available for, you know, months on end, but the guy's got one that's a, you know, different spruce that they could substitute. So sometimes maybe a substitution or a leeway of a couple of different trees that allow to be loud, I guess, would be good, because when you put it on paper, and then a month later it gets approved, a month later they're developing, and next spring they're planting trees. And for some reason, that exact tree might not be there, but there's one so similar that.
Well, definitely I agree with that, because, and that's a reality of just the market, of what's
Yeah.
available,
Yep.
and also when we'd like to see it. So the good thing is that, a modification to the landscaping plan for just the species, provided it still meets the intent, you know, the fact that it's a native species replaced with another native species, that's something that can be approved administratively in the site plan review, because that's a minor modification. Because that's just reality of, like I said, the day-to-day, availability and wanting to get the site plan completed. So that's definitely something that already is in practice, because that's already in your site plan section. So those kind of practicalities can be dealt with when the administration has someone come up with that request. But going back to things like the maintenance issues, things about that also is that in this text, we're not specifying the quantity or like how often they have to do it. We're just asking them to tell us how much they plan to do it. So it's not anything that we're requiring them to be rigidly adhering to, you know, Arbor Foundation's standards versus, you know, Landscape Architect Association standards. We just let them tell us, and really, what happens is that then, when it's on the site plan, if it becomes an issue, then the administration has something to hang their hat on when it goes to them, if they decided to clear cut everything, or if they're just not maintaining it at all. So that way you can go to them and say, hey, come on, you, on your site plan, you said you were gonna maintain them, please go maintain them. Now, we do have other ordinances that are a little bit more broad, that ordinance enforcement can always can utilize for enforcement. But this is just another tool, like sometimes I call it a belt and suspenders situation. You have one ordinance here, but this one is just another way in which we can specify if we have an issue with it, then we can utilize and enforce it. Because you just never know when you're gonna have a bad actor out there.
I do think that specifying the prohibited plants and a place to go to get a list, an updated list, is an excellent thing to specify. I also think specifying a site plan specific to the landscape is very important. Those two changes, I think, are, excellent changes that we really needed.
And that's something that I would be hanging my hat on when I look at the plan, just to know, looking at the species, just compare that list, an updated list of prohibited trees versus what they're showing. And also knowing too, same thing when it comes, Leslie, as you mentioned about which trees get removed. If they list on their plan, oh, these are all, cottonwoods, I'm like, oh yeah, no, get rid of those, that's fine, we don't care about that. But others, but I would be basing my review on that list that's updated. And it could be an issue of just keeping up to date with, the current trends and in terms of known diseases, known invasive invasive species that negatively impact trees.
Well, by approaching it this way, it puts most of the burden onto the developer to present a landscape architecture plan that meets all of the standards, the proposed standards. And I think if they're doing a design in accordance with that they have to make sure that they're crossing T's and dotting I's all the way through. By the time you all see the landscape site plan, it should meet those requirements already. So if the requirements for the most important things are specified, I think that gives you the chance to deal with it administratively. I think my question would be, so what kind of issues would probably come to the planning commission then if these standards are adopted the way that you're proposing them right now?
So, basically, everything you said initially about like having that in there and then getting a plan that's meeting those additional items that have been included, that was always my intent, is like in the past year or two, we've been doing landscape plans and we've kind of had a lot of discussion about them because they were missing things. So the idea is to incorporate it in the ordinance, so that way, when a plan gets in front of you, it's generally compliant with all the standards. So we'll know specifically, all right, it makes it a little bit easier for you guys because in theory, we only bring plans in front of you that are in compliance with the ordinance and those standards. Then, because the ordinance is flexible, we'll make reviews, we'll make suggestions to the applicant. Some applicants might think, well, no, I really don't want to do this, I don't want to do this. Then eventually we'll bring them in front of you and say, all right, but this is what the applicant is proposing. You have the authority to modify this particular quantity or this particular species or size. Do you feel that what they're proposing is acceptable based on their site, based on what the extent of the development? Or do you feel like, no, you should stick with the ordinance and do everything in the ordinance? So those are those instances where that would happen. But always our intent is trying to make sure that whenever we get plans in front of you, that they're as close to compliance with the ordinance as possible. Because also too, when they're in compliance with the ordinance, then technically, as a commission, you are supposed to approve it. Because if they're in compliance with everything, as a permitted by right use, then they've checked every box, then technically they have to be approved. But when they come into those modification standards, that's where you're, right now, the way the ordinance is written, you have that purview and that flexibility in terms of meeting the intent of the ordinance, once again, aesthetically and the other benefits of landscaping.
change up the conversation and add some of my thoughts, maybe to try to move some dialogue forward a little bit. Leslie, you made a comment on, I wrote down here, a burden of review as we manage elements of subjectivity and objectivity in the ordinance. There are elements that, I mean, subjective, yes or no, black or white, and then the concern is, again, burden of review for the objectivity. I think that what has been proposed fundamentally aligns with our initial intent and what we have seen as open issues for site plans that have been presented to us. Primarily the non-native species was always a big issue that needed to be corrected. Probably any landscape plan that had to be amended was due to that reason. And updating the industry association references, et cetera, I think would then address or update, being updated, addresses that concern, an element of subjectivity. It's very clear and laid out. I also think the planning commission has some burden or our responsibility to perform our due diligence in the site plan reviews to address those areas of objectivity with the intent not to overburden the applicant. There's also tools out there. On a personal level, we had an executive business review over the weekend with our CEO. We focused a lot on AI in the business world. And there are tools out there that can read a document and tell you with certain keywords what exists within the document or not. It can summarize a 30-page contract in 5 bullet points in about 32 seconds. So I think over time, we can introduce either on our own or in other formal reviews that technology to ensure that these site plans are in compliance.
Yeah, and I actually like all these changes. If I didn't come off that way, I meant to say, I think this is great. I think I was just wondering about that flexibility versus specificity issue, and wondering, to make sure that it isn't too much burden, not on us so much as in terms of what's it like to administer these changes. So I appreciate all of Joe's comments about like the stormwater management question. Like, it's just not a priority for this community. So do we need to put a lot of energy into doing that kind of thing? So.
Sure. No, and you didn't come off as, for me, I think maybe we're on the same page and just sharing some of my thoughts, expanding on it, that we're basically aligned there. And overall, for the commission review, I'm in basic agreement with the updates to the layout. As I mentioned, the updated reference to the American Port Association, and achieving our basic intent of updating the ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Tom, do you have any comments?
That hasn't already been discussed, so thank you.
Oh, dear God, no.
CJ?
I do. I wanna know, so we've got these increases in screening walls that have taken place. And my first thought is that by increasing the screening walls height, we're potentially limiting the walkability of some of our downtown areas. I was curious what your thoughts are on that, for like, if you're downtown and there's a 6-foot wall, you can't see what's over it, and getting from place to place. I don't really like that very much. But maybe follow my line of thinking.
Mr. Chair, he's increased the minimum. The height, the maximum stays the same, it's the minimum he's increasing, right? It was 4 to 6, now he's seeing from 4.5 to 6, for instance. Right? I read that, right?
Yeah.
But to your point, I agree. And in some cases, when you're talking about your visibility, when you get to clear vision areas and things like that, even on a street corner, shrubs and everything are still capped at like 30 inches. We have an enforcement going on right now on South Mechanic Street there, where someone's got shrubs in the corner and they're like 6 foot tall and it really blocks the corner and we're about ready to go
Those
down.
are like 30 foot tall.
Not the ones I'm talking about.
Oh, I was thinking.
Moyers and Connecticut.
Yeah, that's the one on the.
I
There's three of
walked
them up
there.
front. They're about 6 foot tall.
I can't see cars when I'm
And
walking.
we've been working and trying to communicate with the property owner there, and, yeah, because it's right on the corner of the sidewalk. And in those areas, visibly wise, safety wise, there's, an ordinance in place about the 30-inch height, I think is the max for those. The ones, some of them are to screen between like a parking lot and a residential area or something like that, so. There are some reasons that they're there to help screen, to soften the view, and then there's some of them that are in place to make sure it's not too tall, to make it walkable, visual, open, things like that. Mario could probably even speak more maybe.
Well, no, I think that's a good example with the intent of it trying to deal with those issues in certain locations. But one thing about, once again, this review, I mean, this renovation was, it's minimum mainly to just clarify it's 4'6", and then put in the maximum of 6 foot. But, you actually bring a good point, that we have that standard for both the C1 core, the C1 transition, the C2, and the I district, the I1. So if you wanted to, it could be possible just to add another line, either C1 core or C1 core and C1 transition, or maybe we have a maximum height of the walls. Because I could see, like, for example, I could see, like, on North Washington on the west side, I mean, I know it's city, I think it's a village's property right now. But there's that one block that hasn't been developed, or one plot that hasn't been developed yet, that's kind of used for the events and that everything. Like, in theory, if someone bought it, in theory, they might be able to put up a 6 foot high wall there, and then you just can't see into it. So the intent of the walls in the downtown are definitely just to define the space, to define an area, to continue the street wall, but then also to minimize the impact of headlights. But also there's a benefit of seeing, not just from a safety aspect, but just from a aesthetic aspect, instead of just a solid massive wall. So in theory, if you wanted to, we could change that and add like a C1 core and have a maximum height.
It would make me feel better. I don't know about everyone else, but it would. I don't know exactly what it is, what I want it to be off the top of my head.
I'll be honest, 4'6" is a little high in terms of downtown, because mainly when it comes to like the downtown ornamental items, you kind of only want them to like basic on the average vehicle headlight height. Obviously, we know some vehicles get pretty tall, but we don't want to do everything for an F-350. Maybe those happen from time to time, but maybe honestly, a lot of times they're 4 foot is the max.
Right, I was thinking that, no, I wouldn't really want it higher than the fences that go around like the dining districts.
Exactly, yeah, that's like a 36 to 40-inch height, which is actually usually what they usually are.
That's what I would think too. But what does everybody else think?
Let's finish with their comments. Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, and as we discussed before, developments in the C1 core especially, there isn't a lot of room for landscaping. In some cases, there's none. They may have some potted plants out along an outdoor dining area and things like that, which are kind of help to give the people a little privacy, I guess, from the parking lot and such. In some cases, you may have a downtown parking lot where the screening only takes place along the back area, like across the street from us, along the back area, along the residential apartments. So in those cases, heck, some of those are 20 feet tall or more of the evergreens along there. So I understand your concern, and it's right. You don't want blockades and tall shrubs down in the walkable area, but I don't think there's even much of an instance where that would even take place. In most cases, if it's in the C1 core, it's going to be out in a perimeter to screen, which it's put in place to screen, and that's what this is specifically talking about, is screening between two uses. So, yeah, just keep that in mind, that this screening is there for a reason, because you have like a parking lot or a commercial building butting up to a different type of use and something, so there's some type of screening that's in place for it. It's really not meant to be in the walkable area that you're discussing, like in the main core. There really isn't. Very few. Like, again, the sign, 72 South, down there, they have some shrubbery and stuff like out front. So there's an example of something in the C1 area. that doesn't shrubs, you wanna make sure that it don't get too tall, but our clear vision triangle area, that the intersections and stuff addresses at least that area for safety purposes.
Yeah, and actually Joe brings up a very good point. This stand that I was referring to under 7.2.5, it is for the screening of residential from parking areas. So that's why it goes from 4'6" to 6 foot tall. But then to me, then I think, well, and then later on, when it comes to screening wall in general, we do have the height of the wall may be reduced, shall be reduced to 30 inches in height when located within 20 feet of a street right of way. So, for example, that's those basically the front lot lines. If the front lot lines are there, then they are required to reduce the height of the walls to 30 inches. So.
Scott?
I mean, while I think CJ's point and concern may be valid, the reality of it becoming an issue or concern based on the general makeup and or confines of these districts, for me, makes it no concern. Just my thoughts on that specific point. I don't have any issues as it's written.
Thank you. Justin?
Yeah, I kind of have maybe a few, maybe, so I do. So, you know, thinking about this and kind of listening to what everybody's kind of saying and kind of what we're doing, and thinking about why we even got to this point to, why we wanted this to begin with. You know, the landscaping is the reason for landscaping, right, I believe is for beautification of our community. And with that, and with some of the guidelines that we have is keeping as many existing large trees as we possibly can on some of these sites when they're good, healthy, appropriate trees. And we want to keep that because it takes a lifetime to grow a tree, right? So I think that's I think that part's kind of important. But the reason for reviewing and kind of adapting and changing this is to help give our developers better guidelines so they come to the meetings, let's say, more prepared, or they have better landscaping plans that give them a guide to make better choices for longevity, better choices for plants and trees for longevity and beautification. And so kind of like thinking about that and kind of going through the plan itself. So like in, for example, the very first section of saying that you have to have the addition of the separate landscaping plan, I think that's perfect that we have that in there. And then it brings us down to the next thing, some of the minimum standards and requirements. I think that whole scope is a great addition. I think as well as we take it down to section B of that is the installation. When it should be installed. Also so we can hold developers accountable to what they've done. I know that there's a lot of, just about every single site plan that we've come to the table with, we've had to have or put an exception in with the understanding that hopefully they're gonna come back and they're going to make the changes that we recommended. Did they do that? We don't know. We hope that with this plan, we won't even have to get to that point because we're creating a better guideline for them. So in kind of looking at this, some of the things that always came to the table, or things that they would always have them go back on, is what is the percentage of plants that they have, which has now been added to this, which I think is a great addition, and then recommendations. So recommendations on which plants are better to use and which ones aren't. Now, as I'm kind of looking in here, I would say a vast majority. I can't even speculate, but I'm not perfect. I love landscaping, but I'm not perfect at it. If I had more potential options, here's my tree options, here's my shrub options, here's maybe a few more options and that kind of helps guide them as well, because you have trees, you have shrubs, you have smaller kind of, just various different sizes. I know it might add it and be burdensome, but at least they have better choices to go with.
So are you saying just like categorize them between trees, shrubs, flowers, whatever, like?
The tree, shrub, that's right, just kind of help give them more choices to do so that they don't make, bad choices of, what's the pear one that everybody, Bradford pear. You know, so they're not choosing a Bradford pear. They're not choosing the ones that are typically at the landscaping places, but will help. And I think that will help alleviate some of the issues that are coming to the table. At least I hope so.
Yeah, nothing would make me happier than to see a landscape plan that includes some of this variety, but doesn't include anything that shouldn't be there. That would be terrific. And I agree with you that, the specifying what you can do is going to help people make better choices and do a better prepared plan all the way along.
Because I don't want to prohibit anybody from doing any type of landscaping. I just want to help guide them and give a whole like a lot more choices. You know, but then everybody has their own design, what they think is beautiful. I don't want to be to say like, yeah, that design's ugly. Somebody might think it's beautiful. Somebody might think my design's ugly. But once again, it gets back to beautification of our community, longevity and health of the plants that are there, so they're there for lifetime and generations, not just what's hip and cool at the time or what's popular at the time, such as the Bradford pear example. So that's my 2 cents related to it. The only other comment that I have to make is based on the maintenance. I think I understand why you put that there. I understand where it gives us, but I have difficulty believing from an administrative standpoint that it can be enforced. So maybe take a look at that, of maybe how we can change it to help so that there's not blight, but at the same time it doesn't potentially. Go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. And thank you for that support. And maybe not eliminate it totally. Again, if something looks like a really rough, unkept lawn, it might be difficult to take it as a blight issue, right? But if you say it is way outside of the site plan, then we could release it. I just don't want to have to go out there and say, are you trimming it every 3 months as you said on your site plan? And are you clipping it at the right time of the year as I said that? So having some very broad, or general maintenance upkeep requirements is fine, I think. But it was the minutia part that I was struggling with as far as how to administer. But yeah, if you go by someone and it's just overgrown, and it's full of weeds, we could say, hey, your site plan required you to do at least some upkeep. It's kind of hard to call that blight per se when it's naturally grown. It's not trash or a vehicle on the front lawn.
That's where I have maybe a weed to one person is a perennial to someone else.
Yeah.
A yard with complete bushes and trees and
That's
shrubs
right. That is
is a nature preserve for one person,
right.
which is like an eyesore for somebody else.
Right.
Yeah.
It's an eye of the beholder, and
That's why I don't want to leave it. That's why I don't want to leave it completely off. If there's some segment or aspect of the site plan that they're required to maintain it in a fashion way, maybe leave it there. But don't get so specific and minute that where you have to go out and quantify when they did it and how they did it and whatever. Because again, we have homes, residential homes, they love stuff growing all over the place.
Yeah.
We can't do anything about that because if it's not trash or cars or falling down stuff, it's too subjective. So I don't want to take all of that out of there. I was just concerned with the very minute stuff that might be in there too much.
You can definitely look at, I think that's great direction for me, so I can definitely look at making that more broad, but still having something that can be useful to the administration.
As a tool.
As a
Yeah.
tool, yeah.
I do have a question I didn't ask about, that relates to the prohibited species that are specified in here are all trees and shrubs.
Oh, okay.
Unfortunately, there are some, you bring up the point of weeds and perennials, there are some very invasive, like common reed. It's not gonna be classified as a tree or a shrub, but you
So
don't
no
want
Phragmites?
Phragmites, or you don't want anybody putting
Purple
loosestrife in,
Yeah, purple
you know, or so, is there a way to incorporate perennial or non-shrubs and trees.
Yep,
Thank you.
we do.
And then one other quick thing, I'm very confused about this is of detail, but I think it should be corrected if it's wrong. Under the mulch, which is 7.2.4C, it says that mulch should be 1 inch from the trunk of the tree. I think that's way, way too close. I think the recommendations are 12 inches away from the trunk of the tree. Could you check that out and see
Yep.
what you can find out and bring something back to us?
Is it two missing?
I have a question, is that
Today I
considered
learned
too specific?
Well, it's in the ordinance now as 1 inch, so if
Right.
it's in there now, in the proposed ordinance, it needs to be the correct amount, whatever is gonna be specified. It's
Or it could
basically,
be removed altogether.
Well, actually, that's something that, is always, it's another one of those standards, best practice standards that all the landscape architects, they have a cross-section detail for planting of trees, and they have that, I know it sounds very minutia, but that's apparently very important to the health of the tree, and they have it there, and they have some standards, so I think you're right, Leslie, it's in the existing ordinance, so I can check it and see. Well, then I can at least bring back that answer, and then you guys can let me know if you think that's getting too specific, but that's one example of where they, like, landscapers and even installers and everybody that's kind of, they're okay with that standard, it's to the best of my knowledge, so.
Especially if it's a common practice for them.
Exactly, it's more of a practice, common practice for installation, I think all.
yeah, so we really want the ordinance to reflect whatever the
Yeah.
standard practice is
Yeah.
right now. Sorry.
And if you'd like, I also include language that says, something that, installation of materials shall be done via best common practices.
Mhm.
For example, including, and I can get, if there's any shells in there, maybe I can get rid of the shells, so that way it's not necessarily, written in stone.
We've covered a lot of ground in our landscaping tonight. We talked about the maintenance of it. My question on that is, who's responsible for calling out the maintenance? What I'd like to see or suggest is that we drive this down the road, that when it comes to us, we don't have to be checking things that's already checked by the professionals. And it does need to be trimmed down. We've gotten the feel from the board in regards to that. One thing I will note, that irrigation is required in all this. Even the islands should be irrigated, and that's gonna cause things to grow. So I would think if it was a business, they'd want things to look good, and that leads to as far as trimming and maintenance wise, that leads me to this question, Joe, do we have any past history of lack of maintenance on some of our, properties?
As far as site plans, things and stuff that would come to you, I guess I would say no. But again, you might have done a site plan on somewhere on South Glasgow 12, 15 years ago, that might be overgrown right now.
Sure.
Right, so it's because it's not something we go back in and drive by and say, you know what, in 2006 you did a site plan, and that tree wasn't there.
Yeah.
Or that tree's now missing.
Okay. The other thing is, we talked about, trees, plants, shrubs, non-shrubs. I like that suggestion to call that out. The screening issue, screening has been handled at this level, at the planning commission. When we look at our site plans and we see a potential problem with the screening, that's when that's elevated. So, not height-wise, but it's brought before the board, and the planning commission will review that screening, either approve it or deny it. We have changed many types of screening, we've changed height. I don't know if we've done it at the PC, but we've done it in the township for those very reasons that you brought forth. And the last thing is the burden. I don't want the burden, again, to fall on the village. The burden needs to fall on up front when it's in site plan, when that new addition, new page of that is done. That's when the research should be done. That's when the applicant needs to say, we did survey those trees and they are within our borders of our property. They are this, and we'd like to leave that. Leave those trees alone, or they're part of the screening in the back that doesn't pertain to us, those things need to be brought up front. So the board here isn't, the purpose of this is not to spend hours and hours and hours reviewing the landscape. It's to come in, you've got your comments, we need to review the comments and go forward. Things like screening, things like specific, species are brought up, that should be all handled. So are we at a point that is just a recommendation to you to take it back?
Yeah, I have a very good direction here. There's definitely some substantive changes I can make. So it's up to you whether you'd like to see that first before you do any kind of public hearing, or?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We put a lot of time in this. One of my favorite things is on page 4. It calls plant material species that required, and I brought this up to date to a couple people.
Mhm.
The one I like is the Kentucky coffee tree. I think we need more of those in our township. Do we need any direction, Joe? or is-
Well, I think Mario's got it, and enough feedback you give him.
Okay.
Should-
Thank you, and thank you, commissioners, because there's a lot of comment on that in depth, and we've all looked at it, and that'd be great to get this off the, moving along. Item number 10, any more public comment? Consultants and administration comments, number 11. Leslie, let's start with you tonight.
That's, that consultants, and that's me and Mario.
I'm sorry. Can you meet? Can you do it? Can you comment, Joe?
Sure. So, Mario touched on it briefly as we go through the process about the pre-application meetings. We've had a few of those lately. There are new owners of the vacant lots just on the east side of the post office. It goes all the way through from Broadway to East Burdick there, East Burdick. We met with them, that's, somebody bought it around 2018-19. They were gonna try to develop it. It's very narrow. There was always a plan maybe to get that along with the old Hampton Block property to make it better. And that's how it's shown in our east side, or near east side development plan as well. Right now, there's 2 tracks going. There's new owners on this parcel, which comes out, like I said, where Pearl swings around and goes over to Broadway. And then somebody has the Hampton Block, else has Hampton Block under contract. They've done soil borings and things like that. We've not seen anything from them or heard anything from them other than we know there's a deal in motion. One other one, last week we had another one, the corner house here, 10 West Burdick. It's a rental currently, it was for sale. It's, I believe, probably sold or be closed this Friday, I believe. Yeah, right in the corner of Hudson. There's 2 doors from our office.
Oh, yeah.
It's a duplex.
Yep, it's a duplex now, and we met with the owner who had it under contract and was closing, I believe, the 12th or so of this month. And proposing a second building on the south end of that, because there's a fair amount of space in the backyard, so to speak. And it looks like it's gonna fit and be nice, and that will come to you as well. So there's still some things coming, and, oh, another thing we talked earlier about when redevelopment ready. Oftentimes, we get calls from developers or people looking to buy, or realtors and things like that. And I'll pull them right up, and a lot of times they're sitting at their desk. They pop onto our website, I pop on our website, we go right through, and I go right through the ordinance and say, go right here, here's the form-based code district, here's the things that you can do, here's the zoning map, here you can look here, here's some of those standards over there. So they really, we'll spend a half hour on the phone, I will. Just, it helps them a lot. It's right there on the website. They can always go back then. Once I walk them through it on the site, they know where it is. If they have to go back and look, it just makes it real easy. And when they call in, it's just good to get them all those standards and all those questions, and point them in where the ordinance is on the site, get to where it's the right site, not in Mississippi, the other Oxford, things like that. So that helps a lot, get a lot of those things before they even get an idea of a site plan going.
Are there any marijuana applications coming up that you know of?
No, we've had a couple who've changed ownership, so we made them reapply and repay, and that's fine. You see the one on 20 Church Street, the signs are all up there. They look really nice. They haven't got final approval yet for their building and stuff. There's a couple of inspections. But they took advantage of the projecting sign because the way they sit, they wanted something that was from the face and stuff. So
Will that be the 4th or the 5th?
owner there or party there? You know?
Open dispensary.
I think 5th.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, there's been a couple of them that have changed ownership, again, when they change, the license is non-transferable, so they reapply and then we reissue a new license to a new entity. So,
Thank you. Mario?
Nothing else at this time?
Reports, Oxford Township Planning Commission. Justin, I'll start off, you need to add, I wish you'd add. We're doing our, survey is out for our master plan. So if you haven't had a chance to, until the 15th of February, haven't had a chance to fill that survey out, we'd like you to fill that survey out. And that would be most beneficial for us to wrap that up.
No, it's just we're good, that is the survey that's going out, but also they're also continuously working at and trying to develop the new master plan for the township. So it's I would say every time we meet, there's always a continuous discussion related to it and moving that forward.
Thank you. ZBA.
Okay, so a couple things there. This week they're going through the Main Street accreditation.
This is ZBA.
Oh, I'm sorry, ZBA, no meeting, nothing. It was canceled.
You gotta be all excited.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, no, sorry.
How about
I was like, wait, what?
DDA, yeah, I was already making notes, I thought you said
I
DDA.
get the notice.
DDA is getting a Main Street accreditation process this week. They have their TIF plan, public hearing, everything set at the council next Tuesday. That's on our site. Mario's gotta give me a couple last update to that plan.
Yep.
And, the new owners, I believe they've already closed, if not they're about to, of the Oxford Party Shop, which all
About that, huh?
Somebody
bought
did,
that.
yes, and they were in and, meet with Kelly, I was in that meeting yesterday, very excited, to do work. They have multiple other locations in greater Detroit.
They bought the liquor license also?
No, that was already sold.
Okay.
So they perhaps can do a redevelopment license, through downtown. They have certain ones that are available for when you take a project like that and redevelop it and then bring it back to life, so to speak. They may be eligible for one like that. But, it was a couple different, they were looking like maybe a little eatery perhaps as well there. But, and they're looking at another site or two in town, old structures that could use new owners.
Interesting. It's
Thank you.
exciting.
Thank you. Finally, commissioner comments. CJ?
So one of the things I've been doing for the past month or so is I've been accumulating the amount of taxable revenue that we can generate per acre, like per different parts of the village. And I found some pretty shocking realizations that I think it's something that's valuable to us, because we want to take a look at decisions that we make and how they affect whether the village can make revenue, like create revenue to sustain ourselves. I have a little slideshow that I would like to make it. I can do it in 5 minutes, and I was hoping that maybe you guys would be willing to let me present to you in one of the meetings, if that's allowed.
Up to
If,
the chair and the planning commission?
It'll be short. But I think it's valuable for people to see.
I would suggest, if I may, board, work with Terry on maybe a light night to bring that in and present that to the PC if you like.
Can I make a comment to that?
Certainly.
I think it would be, I think maybe potentially it could be better executed if it was as a individual presenting to the village council, as you personally representing yourself as an individual presenting to the village council what your findings are, than the planning commission to the planning commission. I think that would be the best course of action of how to present that.
Well,
So that would be
one
my
add-on
comments.
to that, I wouldn't mind seeing it. I could go to the council, but if CJ would come in and present himself as a resident and present it to our board, would that work as well?
I believe that is not permitted under the Open Meetings Act, so, I mean, I don't think you can be, if you're on a commission, you cannot, come into the public and represent just yourself as a normal resident, because you're already serving on a commission, and it can contribute to the perception that you're trying to influence the way a commission would determine outcomes. So I agree with Justin that if you have something that you wanna propose, that maybe there's an avenue to make it available to the council as opposed to the planning commission, because we are your peers.
Okay, and it wouldn't matter if I
Well,
presented on.
you know, double check with them about the application of the OMA, because it's,
I think you're right, Dan.
Yeah, you are.
You can't come to this meeting and not, and step up there in a public comment and just be CJ from Lakeside Drive or something.
Okay.
During this meeting, you are a planning commissioner in your capacity,
Okay,
so that's really, I mean, it doesn't mean you couldn't share all your information with, as an agenda item,
okay,
and then you might be the one that's giving that report to them, but it's just saying, you wouldn't be out there as the public person, you would be just sharing with them, and that's possible. Justin his point might be, because you're talking about taxing and revenue and stuff, I think the better venue for that might be council, just because of that, it's more on their realm.
sure.
Obviously, to open to anybody else to view it and see it, and they're recorded too.
I do think that it's also like very affected by zoning decisions that we've made
That's
as
true.
well.
Okay.
So, I will sounds like the right thing is to go to the council. And then at that point, if they decide to go further, then we can have another conversation later. Thank you.
Keep us posted. Justin, do you have any comments?
No, thank you.
Tom, Bo,
No.
Leslie?
no more.
I think we covered a lot of ground tonight. I appreciate everybody's capability of researching this and speaking up. And Mario, you've got some homework to do. I have nothing under future business, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved at 8:36.
All those in favor?
Aye.